A lot of people have been requesting for the anti-sleep video, such as John, Dave, and Toder. So I appreciate you guys' requests and that you are enjoying this series so far. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how anti-sleep works for those that have it in a demon state. So first, who has anti-sleep? Well, the types that have anti-sleep are the ESTPs, INFJs, ENFJs, and ISTPs. So what is anti-sleep? Well, anti-sleep is a combination of two functions. The first one is Introverted Intuition, and what Introverted Intuition is, it's an organizing function. It's organizing ideas and concepts. Ideas are personal. It's pattern and conceptual memory. It's used for future planning, rejecting the new and focusing on the old, builds on existing ideas and concepts. It's building abstract systems and having a narrowed focus and interest. The second part of anti-sleep is introverted thinking, and introverted thinking is an identity function. It's an internal decider. It's the truths. Reasons are personal. It's focusing on logical consistencies and problem solving. It's creating a framework for certain objects or areas. It's maximizing effectiveness with minimal amount of work. So when you put these two functions together, you get anti-sleep. So what is anti-sleep? Anti-sleep is an introverted animal. It's prioritizing what works for the self. It's setting boundaries with the tribe. It's conserving energy and getting enough rest. It's self-awareness in a logical perspective. Identity is tied to intelligence. It's optimizing and puzzle solving current interests. It's used for taking calculated risk. It's maximizing efficiency and effectiveness. It's planning thought sequence, and it's creating an internal simulation. The best way to sum up anti-sleep in one word is that it's used to solve personal problems in the most efficient way. Now, in my opinion, the best way to use anti-sleep for those that have anti-sleep in their animal stack is to use it to solve your demon functions and animals. Now, anti-sleep is also very dependent on who's using it. And in my opinion, if we were to use the anti-sleep to solve the demon issues, then for INFJs, the best way for them to do that is to figure out how to gather new experiences while minimizing chaos. Because INFJs are scared of chaos coming from extroverted sensing, but if they get paralyzed and they stay inside their NI box, then they don't take in any new experience, which leads them to live a boring and unfulfilling life. So for them to have a better life experience, they do need to go outside their NI box and experience the new. And they can do that with the anti-sleep by figuring out what are the chaos that's coming and try to minimize it as much as possible so that they can gather that new experience with very little anxiety. For ESTPs, it's figuring out how to plan long-term by creating and putting systems in place to solve many problems at once instead of one at a time. I have noticed that with the ESTPs that I have interviewed in the past, they tell me that they are good at problem solving, but the only problem is that they're solving one problem at a time because they're using their SE to solve the problem. So by putting the systems in place, they can solve multiple problems at one time and conserve their energy better. For ISTPs, it's figuring out how the tribe and individual works so that they can make long-lasting friendships and relationships. So ISTPs, one of their biggest fear is tribe hate, but if they use their anti-sleep to figure out how SF works, then they can play nice with the tribe and they can make friends. Instead of being alienated from the tribe, they are part of the tribe and they are a valuable member of the tribe. For ENFJs, it's figuring out and developing their own universal framework of understanding to strengthen their identity and create an internal map for making personal life decisions. So ENFJ's biggest problem in life is their identity, but when they practice using anti-sleep, they can start building on that identity by creating their own personal map that they will use whenever they need to make a decision for the self. Now, a good way to practice anti-sleep is by following David Allen's method. He wrote a book called Getting Things Done, which a lot of people are obsessed over because this book is actually one of the best books that teaches you how to get things done the best way. And what I mean by the best way is the most stress-free, efficient way. So I'm gonna show you an example how getting things done or GTD works. And this is gonna be a more summarized version of it. Feel free to read the book. I think it's a really good book. I've read it personally and I do use some of the tips that they have in this book. I don't use everything because I don't have anti-sleep, but I do use what makes sense to me. So how do you practice anti-sleep using GTD? Well, first, you're gonna have an in list, which is pretty much the place where you put open loops. An open loop item is things that you know you need to do and it's bugging you, it's causing you anxiety, you're thinking about it, it's bothering you. So you're gonna put that in the in list. Now the in list is pretty much just a placeholder for all the sensory things that needs to get addressed. So you can look at your cell phone, your mailbox, your email, and any other place where you can have an item that needs to be addressed. Once you have taken all that extroverted sensory items and you put it in the in list, it's time for you to process it. And the way you process it is if that item is something that you can complete in 2 minutes, then you're gonna do it right now. If it's an item that needs more time to complete, then it's gonna be an action item that you are either gonna schedule in to do later on, or you're gonna delegate it to someone else, or you're either gonna throw it away if it's useless, or put it in a notebook where you take notes, or you type it in your computer, wherever you put that reference information in. And that's pretty much the quick summary of processing the in list. Next, you're gonna have an area called waiting for. So waiting for is pretty much just a log of all the things that you are waiting before you can take action on. So for example, if you're waiting for someone to email you back, or waiting for, let's say, the government to mail you a check. So this is gonna be under the waiting for list. Next, we have projects. So projects takes more time to do, and this is something that you're gonna schedule in the future whenever you want to block out time to work on this specific projects. And finally, we have someday and maybe. Now, someday and maybe is just a massive list of things that you might want to do, or it would be nice to do, but it's not important. So you're gonna stick it in that list, and the goal is to just have a massive list just to get it out of your head so you don't think about it, and you can refer back to it later on. And if you need to do it, then you can do it. But if you don't want to do it, it's fine. It still stays on the list. And the whole idea of using this is to get things off your brain and putting it on paper so that you can be stress-free, you can be relaxed, and your mind is clear. So here's a good diagram of how getting things done works. I think this is a good quick summary or outline of how it works. Now, I was talking to an ESTP in a recent group interview, and he was talking about how he uses anti-sleep in his own business and what he figured out about using his NI more after problem solving just one item at a time, which was taking him so much time. He knows that in his business, his goal is to maximize revenue. So by using anti-sleep, he first figures out what the ST is. What is his specific target net revenue? After he figures out what his target net revenue is, he's going to identify the key problems in his business and the key numbers that he needs to hit. So for key numbers, he realized that it's about a 30% close rate for his sales staff, and they usually do about 15 appointments per day. Now for current problems, from what I remember, he said that one of the biggest problems for him is he doesn't know what the staff competency is or motivation level, as well as his efficiency when it comes to dealing with unexpected problems. So how he can possibly solve this using his anti-sleep is he can either hire more people or NF blast to motivate his staff to work harder and tell them what the big picture goal is, how working harder will bring them more money, which will bring them more joy in their life. And in terms of dealing with unexpected problems, he can put together a system in place to solve multiple problems at one time. That way, his attention is not being tunneled in areas that will not bring him long-term results and profit in his business. And ultimately, his goal by doing all this is to reduce his expense and maximize profit. Another area that anti-sleep is very good for is taking calculated risks. So how would you take calculated risks if you have anti-sleep? Well, first, you're gonna use your anti-sleep to think, okay, what bad things can happen if I take this risk? So a risk could be making an investment, starting a new business, going on a vacation, or anything that has a lot of unknowns but could potentially bring in a lot of reward. Next, you can use your ST consume to determine what bad things could possibly happen in your plan. Then you can bug other people and you can ask them what bad things can possibly happen if I proceed with my plan. Then you're gonna check out what the risk and reward ratio is, and if the reward greatly outweighs the risk, and with all the bad things factor in mind, are you still okay with taking the risk? And if the answer is yes, then you pull the trigger. So that's gonna be the blast. So basically, taking a calculated risk requires you to use all 4 of your functions, and the most developed type should be able to use all 4 of their functions and all 4 of their animals, even if they are not the best at it. And ultimately, your goal with anti-sleep is to create SF results. So what is an SF result? Well, if you have a business and the business thrives and makes a lot of money, then you can pass on some of that success to your staff. The staff can also make better money, and when they make better money, they can have a happier life because they can spend their money on things that will bring them more joy. You can also use anti-sleep for holding together parties and figuring out what's the best way for everyone to have fun, be comfortable, and have a good time. So there's many ways you can use anti-sleep to create SF results. So it's not so much an anti-sleep and SF axis, but how you can use anti-sleep to produce SF. And by taking advantage of anti-sleep, you're gonna have less stress in your life, and the people around you can have more fun, more happiness, which in turn will also make you happy.